The caretaker. The orbital station called Bright Dawn floated silently in the cold darkness of space. It was a beautiful place, built with white walls and large windows that showed the stars. Important people sent their children here to learn and grow. They were proud of this station. They said it was the best school in 3-star systems. Walked through the long hallway with a small bag in her hands. Inside the bag were treats she had made in the kitchen. Small cookies shaped like stars and moons. The cubs loved them, and she loved making the cubs happy. She was human. This was important because humans were not respected in the Galactic Compact. The other species saw humans as lesser beings. They were new to space travel. They were not as strong as the or as smart as the. Many species thought humans were only good for simple jobs, but did not care what they thought. She cared about the 6 small cubs waiting for her in the playroom. The door opened with a soft sound, and immediately she heard happy voices. Miss is here." 6 small bodies rushed toward her. The cubs looked like fox children with large ears and soft fur in colors of brown, gold, and white. Their eyes were big and bright, and their tails wagged with excitement. Laughed and knelt down to receive their hugs. Small arms wrapped around her neck, her waist, her legs. She was covered in cubs, and it was the best feeling in the world. "I brought something for you," she said, holding up the bag. "Cookies," shouted the loudest of the group. His golden fur was always messy, and he never sat still. "Star cookies," added a brown-furred girl who loved anything to do with space. Handed out the treats carefully, making sure each cub got the same amount. She watched them eat with satisfaction. These were her children, not by blood but by something deeper. She had cared for them for 3 years now. She had watched them grow from tiny bobbies into curious, playful children. In the corner of the room sat Bora. She was the smallest cub with white fur that was almost silver. Her ears were too big for her head, and she rarely made sounds. The other instructors worried about her. They said she might have problems with her development, but saw something different when she looked at Bora. She saw a child who watched everything, who understood more than anyone knew. Walked to Bora and sat beside her. She held out a moon-shaped cookie. Bora looked at it, then at. Slowly, she took the cookie with her small paws. She did not say thank you with words, but she leaned against side, and that was enough. The day passed like most days. Taught the cubs simple songs from Earth. She read them stories about brave explorers and kind animals. She settled arguments between and who always wanted the same toys. She cleaned up spilled drinks and wiped dirty faces. It was simple work. Some would say it was beneath her. Had studied child development at one of Earth's best universities. She could have worked at important research centers, but she chose this. She chose them. When evening came, helped the cubs into their sleeping clothes. The sleeping room was warm and soft, with 6 small beds arranged in a circle. Moved from bed to bed, tucking blankets and giving gentle pats. Miss whispered, "Will you sing the moon song?" "Of course," said. She sat in the center of the room and began to sing. It was an old Korean lullaby her grandmother had taught her. The words were simple, about the moon watching over sleeping children. The cubs did not understand the words, but they loved the sound. One by one, their eyes closed. Stayed until all 6 were asleep. Then she stood quietly and walked to the door. "You spend too much time with them." The voice made her stop. Commander stood in the hallway, his arms crossed over his broad chest. He was tall, even for a. His fur was dark gray and his eyes were cold like winter stones. "They are my responsibility," said calmly. "They are children," said. "They do not need a human teaching them songs from your primitive world." Wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that music had no species, that kindness was not primitive, but she knew better, was looking for a reason to punish her. He had hated humans since before she arrived at this station. "Good night, Commander," she said instead and walked away. She could feel his eyes on her back, heavy and full of anger. 3 nights later, everything changed. Was reading a story to the cubs when the lights went out. The station shook and a loud alarm began to scream. Emergency. Power failure in sectors 7 through 12. The cubs cried out in fear. The darkness was complete, the kind of dark that felt like a living thing, could not see her own hands. Everyone stay calm, she said, keeping her voice steady. Come to me, follow my voice. Small paws found her in the darkness. She gathered them close, counting by touch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where was the 6th? Bora called. No answer. She left the 5 cubs huddled together and crawled across the floor, feeling with her hands. Her fingers found soft fur pressed against the wall. Bora was shaking so hard her teeth were clicking. I have you, whispered. You are safe, I promise. She carried Bora back to the group. The 6 cubs pressed against her, trembling and crying. The alarm kept screaming. Something fell from the ceiling in another room, a crash that made them all jump. Began to sing. It was the moon's song again, but this time her voice had to fight against the noise of the dying station. She sang louder. She sang with all her strength. And slowly, the cubs stopped crying. They listened to her voice instead of the alarm. An hour passed, then 2's throat hurt from singing. Her water bottle was in her bag and she gave it to the cubs, making sure each one drank. She did not drink any herself. When things fell from the ceiling near them, she covered the cubs with her own body. When they got cold, she gave them her jacket. When they asked if they would die, she smiled and said no, they would be fine, help was coming. She did not know if help was coming, but she would never let them see her fear. Finally, after 3 hours, the lights came back. The alarm stopped. The door opened, and station security rushed in with flashlights and worried faces. Commander pushed past the others. He stopped when he saw. She was sitting on the floor, her back against the wall. All 6 cubs were asleep in her arms and lap, their faces peaceful. Her jacket was gone. Her hair was messy. There was dust on her face and a small cut on her forehead from falling debris. She looked up with tired eyes. They are not hurt, she said. Please check them anyway. Said nothing. His face was hard to read, but something in his eyes made stomach feel cold. He was not looking at her with respect or gratitude. He was looking at her like someone planning something terrible. The medical team took the cubs gently. Before they carried Bora away, the small cub's eyes opened just a little. She looked at and did something she almost never did. She spoke. Thank you, Bora whispered. Then she was gone and was alone in the damaged room, wondering why her heart felt so heavy when she should feel only relief. The accusation. 3 days passed after the blackout. The station was repaired. The cubs returned to their normal lessons. Everything seemed peaceful again, but could not shake the cold feeling in her chest. She woke on the 4th morning to the sound of her door breaking open. 4 security officers stood in her small room. Their faces were hard, their hands ready on their weapons. Commander stood behind them, and this time he was smiling. Of Earth, he said, you are under arrest for endangering youth during the emergency of 3 days ago. You will come with us now. His heart stopped. Then it started again, beating too fast. I do not understand, she said. I protected the cubs, I kept them safe. You failed to follow emergency protocols, said. You exposed the children to psychological harm. You acted above your station. It was lies, all of it was lies. Could see it in his eyes, in the curve of his smile. He had been waiting for this moment. The blackout gave him the excuse he needed. I want to speak to the human ambassador, said. Your request is move. The officers grabbed her arms. They did not treat her gently. They pushed her through the hallways of bright dawn like she was a criminal. Other workers stopped and stared. Some looked confused. A few looked satisfied. They brought her to the grand hall. Had seen this place only once before, during her first day on the station. It was a large circular room with high ceilings and walls made of pale blue stone. Important ceremonies happened here. Important judgments, too. Today it was full of people. Station officers, teachers, maintenance workers. They all came to watch. In the center of the room sat a tall chair made of silver metal, and in that chair sat High Overseer. Was beautiful in the cold way that sharp ice is beautiful. Her fur was pure white, her eyes were pale gold, and she never smiled. She ran this station with an iron will. She cared about politics and power more than children, had always avoided her. Now there was no avoiding anything. "Bring her forward," said. The guards pushed to the center of the room. She stood alone in a circle of light while hundreds of eyes watched her. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to be still. "Of Earth," said, "you are charged with serious crimes against children. Commander will present the evidence." Stepped forward. He held a data tablet and began to read with obvious pleasure. During the power failure of 4 days ago, this human failed to follow standard emergency procedures. She did not contact security. She did not move the children to the designated safe room. She did not report their condition until she was found. Opened her mouth to defend herself. A guard hit her shoulder, forcing her silent. Furthermore, continued, she exposed the cubs to human cultural material during the emergency. She sang songs from her, forcing foreign concepts into their vulnerable minds. She gave them food prepared by her own hands, not approved by the nutrition department. It was insane. All of it was insane. Wanted to scream that she had saved them. She had kept them calm. She had protected them with her own body when the ceiling fell. But no one wanted to hear that. "The cubs will now be brought in as witnesses," said. His blood turned to ice. "No, please no, they are children. Do not make them part of this." Looked at her with those cold gold eyes. "You do not give orders here, human." The doors opened. 6 small cubs walked in, led by a teacher did not recognize. Their eyes were wide and scared. They did not understand what was happening. "Saw first, Miss," he called happily, starting to run toward her. A guard stepped in his way. The smile died on his face. "The children will sit here," the teacher said, placing them on a bench near the front. "They will watch and learn what happens when workers fail their duties." Looked at the cubs, was already crying silently, held her brother's hand so tight her knuckles were white, and Bora, little Bora, sat perfectly still, her huge eyes fixed on his face. "Please," thought, "please do not make them watch this." "The punishment for endangering youth is public discipline," announced. "The human will be marked as unfit for service." 2 guards came forward. They carried something that made stomach drop. It was a collar, a thick band of black metal with glowing red symbols. In the Galactic Compact, this collar was the mark of shame. Workers who wore it could never hold important jobs again. They were forever labeled as failures. "Kneel," ordered. His legs did not want to obey, but the guards forced her down. Her knees hit the cold floor hard. Pain shot through her body, but she did not cry out. "Please," she said one more time, looking at. "I am ready to accept any punishment, but not in front of the children, please. They are too young." Tilted her head slightly. For one moment, thought she saw something like hesitation in those golden eyes. Then it was gone. "Your request is, let this be a lesson to all humans who forget their place." Walked forward with the collar. He was enjoying this. His hands trembled slightly with excitement as he placed the cold metal against his neck. "This is what happens," he said loudly, "when lesser species pretend they can care for children." The collar clicked shut. The red symbols glowed brighter. Felt the weight of it pressing down on her, heavy and shameful. The cubs were crying now, all except Bora. Sobbed loudly, calling for Miss. Was trying to climb off the bench, but the teacher held him back. The other cubs wailed and reached out their small paws. "Silence those children," ordered, annoyed. "They are just confused," the teacher said nervously. They will calm down." But they did not calm down. The crying grew louder. It filled the grand hall like a storm of grief. Looked at them through blurry eyes. She wanted to tell them it was okay. She wanted to hold them and sing the moon song. But she could not move. She could not speak. Grabbed her collar and lifted her head, forcing everyone to see. "Look at your caretaker now," he said to the cubs. "This is what she truly is. Nothing, less than nothing. A failed creature from a failed world." Something broke in the room then. Felt it like a change in the air. The crying stopped suddenly, and a new sound took its place. Footsteps. Small, soft footsteps walking across the stone floor. Everyone turned to look, and there was Bora, the smallest cub, the one who never spoke, walking calmly toward the center of the room. Her silver-white fur seemed to glow in the light. Her two big ears were pointed forward. Her eyes were fixed on High Overseer. "Return to your seat," commanded. Bora did not stop. "Guards, remove that child." The guards moved toward Bora, but something in her eyes made them hesitate. She looked up at them with an expression that did not belong on a child's face. It was old. It was knowing. It was terrible. The guard stopped, and Bora opened her mouth and spoke. The smallest voice. The grand hall was completely silent. Every eye watched the tiny cub standing alone in the center of the room. Bora looked even smaller here, surrounded by tall adults and cold stone walls. But she did not look scared. She did not look like a child at all. Watched from her knees, the heavy collar pressing against her throat. She wanted to call out to Bora, to tell her to go back, to not draw attention to herself. But she could not make any sound. Her voice was frozen in her chest. Bora turned slowly to look at High Overseer. Then she spoke, and her voice was clear and strong, reaching every corner of the great room. "You hurt her." Blinked. Whatever she had expected, it was not this. "Child, you do not understand what is happening here. Return to your seat." "I understand," Bora said. "You hurt her. She kept us safe in the dark, and you hurt her." Whispers started moving through the crowd. The other cubs on the bench had stopped crying. They watched Bora with wide eyes, as surprised as everyone else. Commander stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "This is enough. Someone control this cub." But Bora kept talking. Her words came faster now, pouring out like water that had been held back too long. "When the lights went out, we were scared. We could not see anything. We could not find each other, but Miss found us. She called to us in the dark, and we followed her voice. She held us close. She counted us to make sure no one was missing." Held up her hand. "Enough. We do not need testimony from a—" "I was the missing one," Bora said, ignoring her completely. "I was hiding against the wall. I could not move. I was too scared to make any sound. Miss crawled across the floor to find me. She crawled in the dark, through the broken pieces that fell from the ceiling until she found me." The whispers grew louder. People were looking at each other, at the collar around her neck. "She carried me back to the others. She held all of us together. And then things started falling from above. Big pieces of metal, sharp pieces. Miss covered us with her body. She took the hits so we would not get hurt." Bora pointed at its forehead, where a thin scar remained from the cut she had received. "That is how she got hurt, protecting us, not hurting us." Made a rough sound. The child is confused. She does not remember correctly. This is exactly the kind of psychological damage we are. "I remember everything," Bora said, and now her voice was cold, terribly cold for such a young creature. "I remember she gave us her water because we were thirsty. She did not drink any herself. I remember she gave us her jacket because we were cold. She shivered all night but never complained. I remember she sang to us because we were crying." She turned to look at directly. The security commander took half a step back without thinking. "I remember you came in after the lights returned. You saw her holding us. You saw that we were safe and peaceful, and you said nothing. You helped no one. You only looked at her with hate in your eyes. His face went red, then white. "How dare you speak to me this way? Do you know who I am?" "I know who you are," Bora said. "You are nobody." Gasps filled the room. No one had ever spoken to Commander like this. The other officers looked at each other, unsure what to do. Stood from her silver chair. Her composure was cracking now. "This has gone far enough. Guards, take the child back to her seat. We will continue with the punishment." The guards moved forward again. This time they did not hesitate. Two of them reached for Bora's small arms. Bora did not resist. She let them touch her. But then she spoke again, and her words stopped everything. "My father is Fleet Admiral." The guards froze. Their hands hovered in the air, not quite touching her anymore. "You are lying," said, but her voice had changed. It was higher now, worried. "My full name is Bora. I was placed here without my father's name to protect me from his enemies. Only 3 people in the galaxy know my true identity: the High Council, the Fleet Command, and now all of you." Fleet Admiral. The name hit the room like a physical force. Everyone knew that name. He was the highest military commander in 3 sectors. His word could start wars. His anger could end careers. His fleet protected half the civilized galaxy. And his daughter was standing in the center of this room, watching them punish the human who had saved her life. Bora reached up and touched the hands that held her arms. The guards let go immediately, stepping back like she had burned them. "My father told me something once," Bora said, and now she was looking at everyone, every face in the room. "He said the true measure of a species is how they treat those who serve them, not the powerful, not the important, the servants, the workers, the ones who cannot fight back." She walked slowly toward. "Miss is human. She is not powerful. She has no important family. She has nothing except her kindness and her courage. She gave everything to keep us safe, and you put a collar on her neck." Bora stopped directly in front of his chair. She looked up at the High Overseer, this tiny cub facing the most powerful person on the station. "You just showed me what they are." His face had gone very pale. Her golden eyes were wide, and for the first time she looked frightened. "I did not know," she whispered. "We did not know who you were." "Would it matter?" Bora asked. "Would you have done this in front of someone else's child, someone with no powerful father? Would that make it right?" Had no answer. Bora walked too. She reached up with her small paws and touched the collar around his neck. The touch was gentle, barely a brush of soft fur against cold metal. "Take this off," Bora said. It was not a request. No one moved. "Take it off." His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. He looked at for help, for orders, for anything, but was staring at Bora like she was seeing a ghost. Slowly reached into his uniform and pulled out a small key. He walked forward on unsteady legs. His fingers fumbled with the lock. The collar clicked open and fell to the floor with a loud clang. Took a breath, then another. Tears were running down her face, but she did not make a sound. Bora took her hand. The small paw wrapped around his fingers, holding tight. "I want to go home now," Bora said, "with her." She looked at the other cubs still sitting on the bench. The others, they were all watching her with something like wonder. "They can come too," Bora added, "if they want." One by one, the cubs climbed off the bench. They walked across the room and gathered around in Bora. Small bodies pressed against the human woman, small hands holding onto her clothes. "We want to go with Miss," said, finding his courage. "She is our family," added. Looked down at them through her tears. She wrapped her arms around as many as she could hold. And in that moment, surrounded by children who loved her, she was not a servant or a human or a lesser species. She was exactly what she had always been. Their protector, their singer of songs, their home. The reckoning. 12 hours passed like a fever dream. The station that had once run with perfect order was now drowning in chaos. Officers ran through hallways. Communications officers worked without rest, and everyone waited for the arrival that would change everything. Fleet Admiral was coming. Sat in a small medical room while a doctor named checked her injuries. He was human too, part of the Admiral's personal staff, sent ahead to care for her. His hands were gentle as he treated the cut on her forehead and the bruises on her arms. "You are very lucky," said quietly. "When the Admiral heard what happened, I thought he might turn his flagship around and destroy this station himself." Said nothing. She still felt like she was dreaming. The collar was gone from her neck, but she could still feel its weight. "The cubs," she finally said, "are they okay?" Smiled softly. "They are fine. They are in the next room, actually. They refuse to leave, especially the little one with the white fur." "Bara, of course." The door opened, and a tall male walked in. He wore a uniform covered with medals and symbols of rank. His fur was dark silver, almost black, and his eyes were the same shade of gold as Bora's. But where Bora's eyes were young and curious, his were ancient and hard like diamonds forged in fire. Fleet Admiral looked at. She tried to stand, but gently pushed her back down. "Stay seated," the Admiral said. His voice was deep and calm, the kind of calm that comes before terrible storms. "You are injured." "I am fine, Admiral, really." "You are not fine." He walked closer. "I have reviewed the footage from the blackout, all of it. I saw you gather my daughter in the dark. I saw you shield the children when debris fell. I saw you give away your water, your warmth, your strength." He paused. "And then I watched the so-called hearing." Something changed in his eyes. The calm cracked just a little and saw the rage underneath. It was terrifying. This was a male who commanded fleets that could crack planets, and right now, all that power was focused on what had been done to her. "I watched my daughter cry," he said. "I watched her see someone she loves be humiliated and collared like an animal. I watched adults stand by and let it happen." Did not know what to say. She was very brave. Bora, she spoke when no one else would. The Admiral's expression softened slightly. "She spoke her first full sentences because of you. Did you know that?" Blinked. "What?" "Bora has not spoken more than single words since her mother died 3 years ago. The doctors said it was trauma. They said she might never speak normally again." He moved to look out the small window at the stars. "I placed her here hoping a quiet environment would help her heal. Instead, you helped her. Your songs, your stories, your patience. You taught her that she was safe enough to use her voice again." Tears filled her eyes. She had not known. She had simply loved Bora like all the others. "The words she spoke today," the Admiral continued, "were not random. They were everything she has been keeping inside for years, and she chose to speak them in your defense." He turned back to face her. "Do you understand what that means to a father? You gave me back my daughter's voice. I owe you a debt that I cannot ever repay." Before could respond, the door burst open. Bora ran in, followed by the other 5 cubs. They had escaped from the next room somehow, pushing past the guards. "Father," Bora cried, launching herself at the Admiral. He caught her easily, lifting her small body into his arms. For a moment, the powerful military commander disappeared. There was only a father holding his child. "I was so scared," Bora whispered against his chest, "but Miss made me brave." The Admiral looked over his daughter's head. Something passed between them, understanding, gratitude, respect. "I know she did," he said softly. The other cubs gathered around's chair, climbed onto her lap despite protests about her injuries, held her hand, pressed against her side. They were not going to leave her again. 1 hour later, the Grand Hall looked very different. High Overseer stood where had knelt. Her white fur was messy now, and her golden eyes were full of fear. Commander stood beside her in restraints, his proud face gray with terror. Fleet Admiral sat in the silver chair that had belonged to. His officers stood around the room. The same crowd that had watched humiliation now watched the fall of those who had caused it. "Commander," the admiral said, "you are charged with fabricating evidence, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming an officer. The evidence against you is complete. You will be transferred to military custody and tried before a formal court." Tried to speak to defend himself, but no words came out. His mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. "High Overseer," the admiral turned his terrible gaze to her, "you are stripped of your position effective immediately. You allowed personal bias and political games to cloud your judgment. You permitted the abuse of an innocent worker. You traumatized children in your care, including my daughter, for the purpose of making a spectacle." Fell to her knees. "Admiral, please, I did not know who she was, I did not know." "That excuse," the admiral interrupted, his voice cold as space, "is exactly why you are unfit for leadership. The worth of a person should not depend on who their father is. Justice should not change based on political connection." He stood. "My daughter asked me a question today. She asked if you would have done this in front of someone else's child, a child with no powerful family, and she asked if that would make it right." Had no answer, just like before. "I am not removing you because you hurt my daughter," the admiral said. "I am removing you because you would have done this to anyone, because you saw nothing wrong with crushing someone who could not fight back, because you forgot that power is meant to protect, not destroy." He gestured to his officers, "Take them both." The officers moved forward, struggled and shouted as they dragged him away. Went silently, her head bowed, her perfect composure shattered forever. When they were gone, the admiral looked around the room at all the faces watching him. "Let this be remembered," he said, "not as the day I punished those who hurt my daughter, but as the day we remembered what justice truly means." He walked to where stood near the back of the room, surrounded by cubs. She expected many things, a formal thank you, a medal perhaps, words of official gratitude. Instead, the admiral did something that shocked everyone in the room. He knelt. Fleet Admiral, the most powerful military figure in 3 sectors, knelt down until his eyes were level with hers. "Thank you," he said simply, "for saving my daughter, for loving her when I could not be there, for teaching her that her voice matters." Tears fell freely now. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," the admiral shook his head. "You did what everyone should do, but few actually will. That is what makes you remarkable." He stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have a place in my household for as long as you want it. The cubs too, all of them. Whatever you need, it is yours." Bora tugged on her father's uniform. "Can we keep her father forever?" The admiral smiled. It was the first real smile had seen on his face. "Yes, little one, forever." The new dawn. 1 year had passed since the day that changed everything. Stood at the window of her new classroom and watched the stars spin slowly outside. This station was different from bright dawn. It was larger, brighter, and full of the sounds of children laughing. Human children, other species too, all learning together. The incident at bright dawn had become famous across the galaxy. News stations had covered it for weeks. Politicians had debated its meaning. And slowly, like a plant pushing through concrete, change had begun to grow. The Galactic Compact passed new laws protecting workers from abuse. Schools were required to treat all species equally. The collar of shame was abolished, and humans, for the first time, were officially recognized as equal members of the civilized galaxy. Had not expected any of this. She had only wanted to protect 6 small cubs in the dark. The door to her classroom opened, and small feet came running in. Miss. She turned and smiled as children poured through the doorway. Some had fur, some had scales, some had skin like hers. All of them were beautiful. And at the front of the group, as always, was Bora. The small cub had changed in the past year. She was taller now, though still the smallest in her age group. Her silver-white fur was always perfectly brushed these days because she insisted on doing it herself. And she talked. She talked all the time. Her teachers joked that they could not make her stop. "I have news," Bora announced, bouncing on her feet. "Big news, the biggest news." "What news?" asked, kneeling down to her level. "Father is coming to visit. Today, he said he has something important to give you." Smiled. Fleet Admiral visited often. He had become something like a friend, though it still felt strange to think of the most powerful military commander in 3 sectors that way. He always brought gifts for the Cubs and spent hours listening to their stories. But a special gift for her, that was unusual. The school day passed quickly, taught her students about Earth's oceans, and they taught her about their own. Bora led a discussion about her favorite topic, which was the importance of speaking up even when you are scared. The other children listened carefully. They all knew her story by now. When afternoon came, a familiar ship appeared in the docking bay. Fleet Admiral walked into the school wearing a simple traveling cloak instead of his formal uniform. He had started doing that recently. He said he wanted the children to see him as a person, not a symbol. "Father," Bora ran to him, and he swept her up in his arms. "Hello, little warrior. Have you been causing trouble?" "Always," she said proudly. He laughed and set her down. Then he walked to with something held carefully in his hands. It was a small box made of dark wood, carved with symbols she did not recognize. "Walk with me," he asked. They left the classroom and moved through the halls until they found a quiet balcony overlooking the stars. The children's voices faded behind them. "1 year ago," the Admiral said, "you saved my daughter's life. More than that, you saved her spirit. You gave her back something she had lost." "She gave me something too," said softly. "She reminded me why I chose this work, not for respect or thanks, for moments when a child knows they are loved." The Admiral nodded slowly. He held out the box. "In culture, there is a tradition older than space travel itself. When someone saves your family, when they become part of your heart, we give them this." Opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside, resting on dark fabric, was a small medallion made of gold and silver twisted together. The pattern was beautiful and complex, like a living flame frozen in metal. "This is my family crest," the Admiral said. "It has been passed down for 30 generations. We give copies only to those we consider true family." Stared at the medallion. Her eyes were blurring with tears. "I cannot accept this. I am just a caretaker. I am just—" "You are not just anything," the Admiral said firmly. "You are the woman who protected my daughter in the dark. You are the woman who sang when all seemed lost. You are the woman who taught a silent child to speak again." He reached out and closed her fingers around the box. "Bora asked me to give you this. She said you would try to refuse. She also said to tell you that you are being silly and that family does not have to share blood." A surprised laugh escaped lips, mixed with her tears. That sounded exactly like Bora. "There is one more thing," the Admiral said. "Bora also asked me to deliver a message. She said, and I quote directly, 'Miss, you are packed now and always. Stop crying and come eat dinner with us.'" Laughed again, harder this time. She held the medallion close to her heart. "Pack," she whispered, "I like that." They walked back to the classroom together. The Cubs were waiting with barely contained excitement. Someone had arranged a feast of treats from a dozen different worlds. There were Earth cookies shaped like stars, fruit pastries, and many things could not even name. Bora stood at the head of the table, looking very serious for someone so small. "Today is the 1-year anniversary," she announced, "of the day Miss saved us, and the day I decided to stop being quiet." She held up a cup of juice. "Everyone raise your cups." The Cubs raised their cups. Even the Admiral raised hers with shaking hands. "To Miss," Bora said, "the bravest human in the galaxy, the best singer of songs, the keeper of all our hearts. To Miss, the cubs echoed. They drank their juice and cheered. Then the feast began, and the room filled with laughter and stories and joy. Later, after the food was gone and the cubs were tired from playing, sat in her favorite chair by the window. Bora climbed onto her lap and leaned against her chest. The other cubs gathered around, finding comfortable spots on the floor and nearby cushions. Miss, Bora said sleepily. Yes. Will you sing the moon song? Smiled, some things never changed. She began to sing softly. The old Korean lullaby filled the room, gentle and warm like a blanket. One by one, the cubs closed their eyes. Even the Admiral, sitting in the corner, let his eyes drift shut. Looked down at Bora. The small cub was already asleep, her breathing soft and peaceful. Her ears twitched slightly as she dreamed. Outside the window, stars turned endlessly in the darkness. Somewhere out there were billions of worlds, trillions of beings, infinite possibilities. But right here in this small room, there was something more precious than all of it. There was family. Held the sleeping cub closer and kept singing until her own eyes grew heavy. The medallion hung around her neck now, warm against her skin, a symbol of belonging, a promise of forever. She was no longer just a human working in a world that looked down on her. She was no longer just a caretaker doing a job others found beneath them. She was back. She was home. And when new children arrived at her classroom, scared and uncertain, far from everything they knew, she would kneel down, smile gently, and say the same words she always said. You are safe here, I promise. Because that was what family did. They protected each other. They sang in the darkness. They spoke up when no one else would. And they loved without limits, without conditions, without end. This was the new dawn, not just for Bora or for the cubs who had stood by them, but for everyone brave enough to choose love over fear and kindness over cruelty. The stars continued their eternal dance outside, and in the warm classroom, surrounded by sleeping children and endless hope, finally let herself rest. She had found where she belonged. She was home,